We are going to end chain migration. We are going to end the lottery system, and we are going to build the wall.
And now I think it's our responsibility to protect those young men and women, because it's really a fight not only for dreamers today, but for a real sense of fairness in the United States of America.
Immigration, now the key issue in the talks about funding the government. This as temporary protection status is coming to an end for a number of countries. Now announced today, El Salvador, almost 200,000 people, expiring September of next year. Honduras, 57,000, expires July 5th, 2018. Haiti, 46,000. Nepal, Syria, there you see, those are also 2018 expiration for temporary protection, essentially meaning that the immigrants could come here and stay inside the U.S. The DHS, Department of Homeland Security, saying the original conditions caused by 2001 earthquakes in El Salvador no longer exist. So it's coming to an end, and it's sparking a lot of reaction. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief of the Weekly Standard, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, and Charles Lane, opinion writer for The Washington Post. Let's start, Steve, with this TPS, temporary protection status. The administration is saying, hey, listen, it's over. El Salvador can take the people back. For different lawmakers, they're saying, well, wait a second. They've been here almost 20 years, and they've established themselves and their families.
Right. Well, Milton Friedman said there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program, and I think this is evidence that he's right. This is a program that was put in as an emergency measure. It's been on the books now for 18 years, as you suggested in the intro. The conditions that caused it in the first place, these dual earthquakes, are no longer in existence, and the justification for it, I think, has shifted quite obviously, and its proponents are not even really pretending that the justification has shifted. Look, Donald Trump ran for office saying he was going to change immigration laws and change them in a pretty dramatic way to make them more restrictive. That's what he's doing here. Nobody should be surprised that he's trying to do this, and I think the objections are pretty tough to justify at this point.
One of them, Republican Mario Diaz-Balart, saying, I'm in strong disagreement with the administration's decision. While living conditions may have slightly improved, El Salvador now faces a significant problem with drug trafficking, gangs, and crime. Since 2001, these people have established themselves in the United States, making countless contributions to our society and our local communities. It would be devastating to send them home after they have created a humble living for themselves and their families. I strongly urge the administration to reconsider this decision. It doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Well, the United States is a wonderful country, and it is a much better place to live than a lot of places on Earth. But as Steve points out, this is a temporary program. It's like how we talk about DACA. The D in DACA stands for delayed action. Americans have been told that these are programs that are temporary, that they're not permanent, and then there's sort of a large bait and switch where after decades they say, well, now there's nothing you can do. To me, this points to the much larger problem of our immigration policy, which is not very coherent, which doesn't think through what the needs of the country are and how they match with the citizens. And unfortunately, we're just not having a very good conversation about it. There really are lots of conflicts here. There's the rule of law, there's what the country needs, there are the needs of immigrants, and there are the ways that immigrants help countries and the way that they hurt, and nobody's having a good conversation.
Sure.
Well, in a way, I give the President some credit for precipitating an issue that has been allowed to sort of roll over somewhat mindlessly for many years, and as my colleagues have already said, outstripping the original purpose of this temporary grant of status. Having said that, I also don't think it's very realistic to talk about returning so many people to El Salvador, in effect, over the next 18 months. And the reason I say that is it could be a total of about 400,000, it's 200,000 temporary departure people, but they seem to have at least 100,000 children among them, many of whom are U.S. citizens. That's a big problem in and of itself, and I suspect a lot of them are going to attempt to stay here some other way. They're going to try to get a legal status, and a lot of them will just stay illegally if they can't find a legal means. So what I hope is going to come out of this is that, in effect, sort of like he tried to do with DACA, the President's put Congress on notice. They've got 18 months to come up with something permanent that makes sense for these folks. And I would say to Representative Diaz-Balart, that's your That's your job.
Right. Speaking of that, it is the central issue now on this government funding negotiation. Here is Mick Mulvaney on DACA.
There is $1.6 billion in the request for this year. That's the 2018 funding bill that we have to take up before the end of January. There's about $18 billion to finish the southern border security. The president is absolutely committed to having that as part of a larger DACA agreement. So it's really two pieces, $1.6 billion for some money for some wall this year, and then a larger agreement for the entire wall, for the entire border security package as part of DACA.
Can Democrats, Steve, get to a place where they don't give President Trump a win, they give him some security, they kind of punt the issue down the road a little bit about the wall, and they somehow come up with an agreement?
Well, Democrats are deeply divided on this. I mean, you've got the progressive left that doesn't want to even have this conversation, and I think you've got more pragmatic Democrats that are willing to try to find some solution. And, you know, it's a good guess as to who's going to win that debate. I think that the most likely outcome is that the give will be in how we define wall. What does a wall mean? It's not going to be a permanent structure that spans the 2,000 miles of the southern border. It will be a combination of cyber defenses and fences and the existing wall or the existing border protections, which cover some 654 miles of the 2,000 already, and that will be the give. I mean, that's where I think
is that good enough for the president's base? And after a campaign of Mexico is going to pay for the wall, we're going to get the wall. There's different pieces of the wall that are already up to look at. The president reportedly is going to go look at them along the border. Is that good enough?
I don't know exactly, but what really needs to happen is looking at our immigration policy dramatically differently. And we keep on having these problems where every few years we need to have amnesty for hundreds of thousands of people. We need to change at the outset so that we can, and there's no reason why it can't be win-win for everybody, really. Border security and helping people who are here illegally.
Quickly, it could be another punt, January 19th to whatever it is, March, end of March, to come up with some big deal.
On the spending.
On the spending.
It's true, although the clock is really ticking on DACA itself, which I think expires in March. And as to your original question, is it good enough for the base? It can be if the president finds a way to pitch it that way, and he can already claim that illegal crossings in Mexico are way down in his presidency. He could declare victory himself, but I think he is very fixated on that physical wall.
And Mexico is not paying for the wall.
Mexico is not paying for the wall.
Or an invisible wall.